Me myself, I was born in California. My grandparents were born in Big Flat, Baxter County. One comes from Stone County, my grandmother, and my grandfather, the Vickers and the Coxes are from Marion County, the old Buffalo City. And they came in 1839 on that trail, the Trail of Tears Trail, as they call it, the last removal. But they turned down the Buffalo Road and stayed there and basically hid out for like 20 years before they got land secured to them. And that was in 1839-40. Now, they met there. Thomas Vickers met Elizabeth Cox, and they came from the Cherokee Nation. They were both born there. Thomas and actually it was Thomas and Elizabeth, born there in the 1820s. Thomas 1812, and Elizabeth Annie Davis in 1822. And it was during that removal period, the last removal, that they came. But there's a whole lot more than the last removal. There was a whole removal into Arkansas from 1800, and in 1809, the U.S. government got with the chiefs at Willstown, which is now in Alabama. They got with them, and they offered them to come to Arkansas. And no one knows that. It was an offer, not a demand, because the Cherokee Nation was still a sovereign to sovereign nation. You don't dictate anything. You ask. It comes through policy, nation-state policy. So that's how Arkansas became the Cherokee Nation. In the books, they don't put it that way. They say it was just basically strolling bands. One book, the latest book out, it's forming a Cherokee American Alliance in the Creek War. The author, she continues the story about the Chickamaugas in 1775, all the way into 1800, and she says that they left into Arkansas. But really, in reality, it was the Cherokee Nation. So they don't show these documents that I found, in the archives. Their microfilm rolls are like, this big, and there's hundreds of letters you got to read through them. That's how I discovered these things. So, with that, all that history, no one really knew about, and the Arkansas story was really nothing special. And actually, they basically attacked the character of these chiefs before they went. But come to find out, they're the principal chiefs of the Cherokee Nation. And the guys who took over were their subordinates. The famous Trail of Tears was actually agency personnel, John Ross, Richard Taylor, Charles Hicks. They worked at the agency with Agent Reeves. And the agency was at Calhoun, Tennessee, which is where it's at nowadays. And so they got with him, and then Andrew Jackson, after the Creek War, was the agent for the Cherokee, the top agent for the Cherokees, the Creeks, and the Chickasaws, and the Choctaws. So he facilitated this plan, especially with the Cherokee, to get these guys together, induce some migration, because the treaties that took place were first southward on top of the Cherokee Nation, major towns in what is now Tennessee, and then from the south. But the plan was to surround the Cherokee Nation and then try to get them to take the deal. And that's what they say here. They just say here. But so that part of the story, once I got into these archives and I got these records, I just put them together chronologically, and it basically tells the story. So that was new back then in 2005 when I came out with that book. And after that, I got with the Cherokee chief who the last couple of years and tried to break it down to him slowly. And he didn't really absorb it. Like he was saying, he was looking at it, but he wasn't absorbing it. And so, and I've talked to our senators, and they've listened to it, but they haven't done nothing. But because I'm proposing to them that from this treaty, which is 1817, that it's still kind of valid. There's a clause in there, the Article 5, where it says to take a census. And the Oklahoma Cherokee, the ones who took over illegally, knew far well not to do that census. You don't want to enumerate people you're trying to lose. And basically that's what happened to the Arkansas Cherokee. And in the East, because they didn't do that census, the complete one. And so, nowadays, I still think that's owed, at least that, to the people who are Cherokee, like me, Brenda, Toy, and people who have Cherokee, you know. And another thing I wanted to bring up, you know, we're colonial American and Cherokee. I go all the way back, both sides, my mother and my father, to Georgia, Virginia, you know. We are, and I'm Cherokee, and I have Chickasaw. But just being back from something that far long ago, you know, if you guys are back that far, you're walking, living, breathing, you know, it's like you're the story of America. And that's becoming less and less. You know, we get people now in 1 year, they're trying to be the president of the United States after either 1 year or one generation. And that is, to me, is very frightening. Because I know what happened to the Cherokee Nation. You know, what happened was them is they let these guys in, and they had families, half-breed families, and they were traders and interpreters, and they weren't really into being Cherokee. They wanted to get rich off of this, and they did. And plus, they worked with the government to, you know, lose us in Arkansas and in the East. That's why when you go back there, you got the Ashoda Cherokee, you've got the Georgia tribe of Eastern Cherokee. They're just like me, Brandon, and Toy, and any of you here who have Cherokee, because they were caught in this mess, you know. And the whole thing was basically to get the land. The Eastern land, let me see. Okay. That's, the red line is really the Cherokee Nation. The other is like, except for down here in South Carolina, all the other in Kentucky, that's really not the Cherokee Nation. That's kind of, it was a general hunting land, mostly Shawnee. But the red line is really what the proclamation line is. They drew up in, it was 1768 to 1773. That's to divide the Indian nations from the colonies. You know.
South of the red line was the Cherokee Nation?
No, west.
West.
West and south, that line, the red line, and then over there in Tennessee, down in Alabama and Georgia, and then the red line following up, that's the Cherokee Nation. The very tip here is where the settlers came down.
Can you blow that up a little?
I don't think I can. Let me see.
Up on the right hand? There you go.
Okay. That's how big the Cherokee Nation was. That's millions of acres. They basically got all that for Oklahoma. That's what it turned out to. But it was supposed to be Arkansas from here and Oklahoma, you know. But when they got them, when they built their, you know, puppet regime, which is John Ross and Richard Taylor and them, they had it. You know, that's all they needed to do, and they did the rest after the chiefs left. They basically took over from there. And that's where you get, they never dealt in courts. That's the main thing. A sovereign nation, they deal in diplomacy just like we do with, you know, our Secretary of Defense and our Cabinet Secretary. When they go abroad, they meet other leaders that way. And they do it by treaties. They have treaties they go by. See, because a treaty is a intersocietal mechanism used to regulate ongoing relationships with other nations. Everybody's a treaty. They all have treaties. Everybody that's recognized as a nation does treaties. They did treaties with the Cherokee like that. But anyways, that's the overview. Yeah, sir.
What year was the center of the Cherokee Nation in Tennessee?
Oh, the Cherokee had been there for thousands of years. I don't know how long exactly, but Tennessee, it was there the last part of it until 1839. But so anyways, we got to move on forward here. I wrote a book I call them my credentials, my book here. I wrote that. They sold CDs out of this magazine, The Wild Wild West. My book got accepted to the New World Encyclopedia, and it's in there with some big names. Thea Purdue is the best one out of all these. I use her work. Woman Man-Killer, you know, the Cherokee chief of Oklahoma. Have you heard of her? She died a couple years ago. She's famous, you know, for being the chief of the first woman chief, and so she's like the most famous person in modern times. But I got on that list, but they took my work into their work instead of using my story, because it's the 1839 Trail of Tears story. We have our home here that began in 1809, but we have it's all recorded on microfilm and no one ever used it. There I got made a newspaper. This is something else. Mike Huckabee in 1999 and 2000 gave me 2 proclamations regarding this history. You can't get them nowadays, they won't give them. Instead of going uphill and moving on with the people here, it's went downhill. They won't do anything anymore. And I think part of it's because the Cherokee Nation, with what they know, what they think they know, is that everybody went to Oklahoma. Nobody stayed in Arkansas. They just gave up this land for Oklahoma, which we know is ridiculous. They would never do that, and they never did. I got ample proof. But that's their defense, and they don't want to come here. The chief, I thought maybe he would, but other bands, you heard other Cherokee organizations, people from out of town came here, and they started saying they were us. They started charging for memberships, and that drew red flags everywhere. And the Cherokee Nation, you know, they really were very angry about that, and the United Couture Band, but it wasn't us. Those guys are long gone now. They got their money and they're gone, which is what happens, you know. We got the bad name for it. So I'm trying to rebuild that, but I think I'm at my limits, my wits end with that, because, you know, he's not gonna do nothing that far, because really it became so politically incorrect, and you can't change people's minds about Arkansas. You know, they have a prejudice against it now. But I mean, it's absolute, it's just ridiculous, because the chiefs, I got letters from them, denials, they didn't want to go. But anyways, this is, let me show you another one. Chief Paul Vickers, this is from Tim Hutchinson back in '98. You know, I started a long time ago doing this, but we didn't have the technology then, and the bands that came in there at that time, after this, they just messed everything up for us. We couldn't move on because, and nowadays, you know, I may start it back up, but I'm not sure. Really, I would like the authorities to do a census and include us that way. And there's good things from that, because today, one thing I wanted to talk about, what's happening today with immigration and 200 years ago, I mean, it's almost identical. So that proves that just because the British came here and, you know, or whites or whatever, they're not unique anymore. That invalidates it. Now we have a real problem from people from the South who are actually indigenous coming here. So it invalidates that. It's people who are wanting to come here for basically financial reasons or whatever. Some are nefarious reasons. It's totally unsafe. And I was thinking we could do something with our rights here, because Indian tribes can control their populations, you know, if they work with the government to avoid illegal immigration. Because I was born in California and I was raised in a town that was all first generation, second generation immigrants. And, you know, they got taken over by other ones. They just come in and flood in, and it's a pretty ugly scene. And we don't want that happening here with us, because we've been here for generations. And I'm on your side. As being Cherokee, you know, I could do a lot more. This is the Vickers. A. Vickers, my great grandfather's brother. Him and his wife Desi Treat. Have you guys heard of the Treats?
Yes.
Here's my other great grandfather, Sherman Curtis and Amanda. They're both Cherokee. They have a lot because my dad said he was 3/4 and he was half. He didn't know about his other side, but we got it passed down. And this is Roselli. That's Roscoe Vickers. He's one of the younger ones. And with little Mikey, he's still alive. And they know him. But so there's Tom and Margaret Vickers. This is the oldest one I got in toy. Wait. This is in Buffalo City, I think. That's these two. And too bad it's not a great picture, but you can still see it. To me, that's a godsend. It's pretty awesome. But see, I'm Cherokee, and I had to go to court one time, and I got it through the courts too. So anyway, the Cherokee towns. This is a little closer picture. Down here, we're going to talk about a little bit today, South Carolina. Keowee, Fort Prince George. It's down here somewhere in this area. But that's where they used to go to have the treaties at, Fort Prince George. Let's see. Early on, anyways. Here's the proclamation line, another one. This is from the British Board of Trade. You can see how Carolina's, how it stops there, Virginia. All that's the Cherokee Nation, the Indian Nations, everything west. Until 1775. That's when they started coming across the border. See, they don't teach you that in high school, you know. But this is it. I found a lot of records from the British, from the Virginia archives. This is a breakdown of the Cherokee treaties. Up here where Tennessee is, you know how Tennessee is, how it's shaped. They came in here and said they bought it, but according to the proclamation from the British, anything passed on was illegal, and actually the Cherokee do that. They just spent 5 years building that border. So without these records, you wouldn't know how adversary they would have been against that. They called the Treaty of Sycamore Shoals in March of 1775, but it never took place. They made that up because they would have never dealt with them because they just did. Here's the Over Hills town. This is the Little Tennessee River. The Over Hills town is where the main towns are, the main chiefs. You know, the Little Tennessee River in East Tennessee connects to it. This is what it looks like. That looks like the White River. It's very similar to the White River. And Chilhowie, I went camping here. This is Fort Loudon, built there by the British to protect the Cherokee. And so, anyway. There's King George III. They dealt with him through King George II. You know, and they dealt with these guys through the Governor Glenn and Governor Littleton of South Carolina, and Governor Dinwiddie from Virginia, and Governor Dobbs from North Carolina. The Cherokees dealt with them directly. They were the leaders. This is the High Chief. This is Ostanaco. He did the proclamation line. This is in England in 1763, 61. And that's Gorgon. King George is like this one here. But that's real silver. That today, even one that doesn't belong to him, is like $8,000. This one is at the Ontario, the British Museum in Ontario, Canada. I believe it's still there. And this is a standing turkey. He's second in line. He became the principal chief of the Cherokee Nation. It's standing turkey too, or little turkey. You'll hear about him a lot with his Gorgon. This is in England in 1761. After the war, they had a war with South Carolina. It was over something allegedly happened. And it wasn't really, I think it was politics myself. They were angry. North Carolina was mad because they were dealing with Virginia. So, foremost objective tonight, how much time do I have Okay, we're gonna go through,
You're okay for now.
we'll go through this as much as I can, but this Facebook page, you can go to it anytime and click the links. But, yes,
Approximately what year did the language, in other words, emphasize the names, the chiefs, or
Oh.
the Cherokee
yeah,
language changed to,
yeah. It was about 1805.
it was?
These highest chiefs let the churches in. A Brainerd mission, Presbyterian mission, Moravian missions, they let them in. These chiefs here that I'm showing you let them in, because they were going to teach their kids, you know, they used to call it acculturation, you know, to teach them to educate them, you know, and math and science and stuff like that, and so on. They're the ones that let them in, and no one in the books. Instead, the books, they assassinate their characters, because they have to assassinate the characters to like write them out of the story, like in a movie. That way, they're not in there with John Ross, because they just pop out of nowhere, you know. And that, but they were so the inflection point in the Cherokee Nations, 1817 and 1819, because in 1817 they did the removal treaty to move to Arkansas. 1819, Ross and them doubled back with the agent. That's the dirtiest move they ever did, and they annulled that treaty and the immigration to come here. These guys aren't even chiefs, and they allowed this. And Andrew Jackson was the head agent. President Monroe, James Monroe, was the president. They just did the 1817 treaty with the real chiefs. I'll show you what they have to say about that. We were very happy. So, but as far as English, the treaty is 1721, 1730. The first trip to England was 1730 with Conestoga, Ottakalakala, which is Anaskaski, which is woodworker. He was a carpenter. He was the head speaker of the Cherokee Nation. And the king, let me show you something here. Well, can you guys read this?
No.
Not yet.
Can you read that right there?
No.
Let me see. Maybe I can read it. Okay, it says, Little Turkey, great beloved man of the Cherokee Nation. The Badger, beloved man of the Southern Cherokee. Hanging Maw, beloved man of the Northern Cherokee. What they mean is like down in Alabama and up in Tennessee. Just put it that way. And then this is the Grand Cherokee National Council in 1792. So all these chiefs are here. These are the top chiefs. Black Fox. The main things to remember: Little Turkey, Richard Justice, and Glass of Lookout Mountain Town. That's in Tennessee. You know Lookout Mountain Town? That was their land. Those are the ones that came to Arkansas and no one knows about it. The very top chiefs. The principal chief was Tushlar during that treaty. The principal chief and all the top chiefs, Glass, Dick Justice, came to Arkansas. That's unbelievable, and it's true. I mean, really, I discovered all this. Just amazing. So I'll show you. But this is the Grand Council. I just want to show them that they're still chiefs and they're meeting and they're talking about the 1791 treaty, because they did the 1785 treaty, which is I'll get back to that later. This is the 1805 treaty. See what I mean by names? Can you see that? Black Fox, Path Killer, Glass, Doublehead, Dick Justice. Tushlar's down here. Okay? Those guys all, the top chief is Path Killer in 1805 with Black Fox. Black Fox was the first one to go to Arkansas with Takatoka. He's the principal chief. In the books, they try to assassinate his character too. It's all unfounded. They're doing this because they're trying to take away from the Arkansas story. But, okay, here's the Cherokee Nation. This is their take on who's chiefs. Notice they start in 1827. All that prior, they don't even account for. They're trying to say that Pound Killer gave all the rights to John Ross, which never happened. You know, I gave, Path Killer was stayed the chief, and he had to deal with everybody else, it wasn't just him, it was all this here. They never showed these treaties in the books because you have to get rid of all these chiefs because they stay there. They're there. This is the federal records. These are federal treaties with the United States. These chiefs are written into the federal records. They don't put these in the books because you can't tell that story. And they went to Arkansas, most of them, early on. So let me see if I got that one page. See that? Removal, Cherokee removal 1817 to 1824. Microfilm, no one, there's so much stuff in here about us, it's ridiculous. No one touched on that in their books, the history books. There, Arkansas, this is inaccurate. It's supposed to be all this and probably Oklahoma, all this. But they got out of that. They wiggled out of that with John Ross. They had built their puppet regime, and the real chiefs are 800 miles away, so they're gone. That's what they did. And I got a really detailed letter that shows. See, here's another one. In 1816, John Ross, they were commissioners for the chiefs, so I just showed you that list. They were commissioners for them to go to Washington because they were either white or mixed, half-breeds who spoke English. And they let them deal with that part of it. But clearly it says, we do not conceive ourselves authorized to sell those tracts of land. Notwithstanding, we are of the opinion that the Cherokee Nation ought to dispose of them. So how could these people, John Lowry, the Ridge, Richard Taylor, John Ross, become the famous Cherokee chiefs in Cherokee history? But no one else knows about them. They're the famous chiefs in Cherokee history. They're the Oklahoma chiefs. See, that is ridiculous. That's why I do this. You can see it doesn't take a genius to figure that out. It just takes research. Even here, this is Andrew Jackson. Like I said, after the war, 1812, he was the head agent in Nashville for all the tribes. He came down to visit them, talk to them, and here, right there, he says right here, after that 1819 treaty, that they're angry with Charles Hicks, for doing what they did with that treaty. And this is from the Cherokees who are still there. They're down in Alabama at Creek Path Town in Willstown. And the principal chief, they also knew by doing that treaty in 1819, by taking an allotment, which was in the 1870 treaty, they're the only ones that got it, 38 people only. And by doing that, they were also U.S. citizens. No one knows that. Like right here, it says it clearly. As part of their nation, they have become citizens for getting those allotments. That's Andrew Jackson to John C. Calhoun, which is the Secretary of War. And a few years later, Andrew Jackson became president, and John C. Calhoun became vice president. That's in 1825 to 1835, when all that other stuff took place. The other drama, the Cherokee Nations versus Georgia, the Indian Removal Act. See, the Cherokee Nation versus Georgia is another. What they did was they methodically lowered the nation-to-nation relationship to a subordinate, or they call it a hegemony, over the Cherokee Nation by filing in courts and letting, later on, we went under the Constitution, but it was never supposed to be that way. That's them working for it to lower the relationship so that, the United States could have hegemony over the Cherokee Nation. See, now you didn't know that. I didn't know that either until I got into this. Here's the Cherokee Nation. Let's see if I get this. Doesn't want to work for me here. Can you see that? See, this is another one. Lovely's purchase was purchased for the Cherokee, but what they did was, it goes from here, point remove on the Arkansas River to Batesville, all the way up to the White River where we're at. We're supposed to go all the way to Oklahoma, but they never did the survey. They got the chiefs here and they wouldn't do the survey. That stuck. So and they wouldn't do the treaty here or work with them here. And they started corresponding with John Ross and them in the east. So, but that's what it was supposed to be, all this here. All that was supposed to be Cherokee Nation. And we really never did sign our land away. Okay? There's another shot of the proclamation line in 1762, but it took years to do. With the Cherokee part, South Georgia, South Carolina, took about 5 years to develop that. And here's the chiefs that went to, these chiefs are the first recorded chiefs. And this is the king, standing Turkey 1. This is the prince, Ashot. This is Okonostoto. This is Adekalakala here. And this is Tiftoy. He's from South Carolina. He's from Ashot, the Tennessee River towns that I showed you. He's from Ashot and he's from Shota. And so is Adekalakala, right along the Tennessee River. There's a shot I took of, that's a memorial of Shota, the old principal town. I took that shot. Here's the old map. This was drawn in 1762. There's Shota right there. I took the pictures at Chilhowie, but this is another map of it, the Little Tennessee River. That's again, doesn't that look like the White River? Look how much that looks like the White River. It's amazing. Here's an actual treaty of 1798, what it looks like, with John Adams. And the chiefs, you can't read, it's not really legible. This is the same one here, with the chiefs in 1798. That was them coming down southward from where Tennessee is, on top of where the major towns were. That's why they went south into Georgia, the big chiefs. But you can see here, the Rising Fawn, Arkansas chief, he came to Arkansas. The Broom, Kamami Butterfly, Glass. Glass is the main one. Those are the ones I know about. But, so. Okay. This is a lot more. This is the Arkansas. Before they came here to Arkansas, they met at Knoxville. And they went to Washington to meet James Monroe, the president. But instead, John C. Calhoun was there. And he's telling them right here, Tuskegee, the chiefs came, some of them came all the way from Arkansas to the east to do the treaty, to finish it up, and then go to Washington to hear the speech from the government. And he was just telling them here, General Tuskegee and the warriors, I'm very glad to see you, and to move to Arkansas so you can hunt, you won't be surrounded, because that's what he was telling them. But by him saying that, that was metaphorical, because that's what happened. In today's world, when that happens, everybody that I know who's been in this area was Cherokee. All they did is they just heard they were Cherokee. Now, in contrast, if you go to Oklahoma, they were protected, so it saved it quite a bit, because they weren't surrounded like we were until 1900. And they basically did that. They turned it into a state. The Dawes Rolls is them signing up for land, but giving up their tribal membership. The same thing they use nowadays for their Cherokee, which is, and then the only role that was ever agreed to on treaty was the 1817 Article 5 of our treaty, and they still owe it to us to do that. And he says it here. This is really important because he says this is offering to go to Arkansas, the Cherokee Nation. See, in the books they don't say Cherokee Nation; they say just loner Cherokees moving to Arkansas on their own, But this is them with a proposal to the Cherokee Nation, nation to nation. And he's talking about here, this is Meigs. Returned Jonathan Meigs was the head agent. Talked to William Crawford, the Secretary of War, who he became Secretary of War, because he was the acting Secretary of War at that time. But although they can, in first instance of application, say no to in the same sense they feel they cannot resist reiterated applications, and they anticipate that in this way their limits will be circumscribed. Okay? And they fear that many will migrate anyways, land or no land, and that they were crumbled to pieces, because what it does when you get surrounded, at this time there was floods of people coming in, settlers waiting to get on that land. They could fill up anything, and then especially in the east, quick. That's what they did. So they were up against that, and that's why they went to Arkansas. And it was the Cherokee Nation. It wasn't strolling bands, Cherokees. And this is another map, and it shows, this is the 1798 treaty here. And then the rest of them, this is the 1819 treaty. When they left, here's what they did. John Ross and Richard Taylor, the Oklahoma Cherokee, without any permission or authorization, went back with the ancient names, and they did this treaty outlined in red, which surrounds the Cherokee Nation. See what they did? They were helping them out. And everybody on that land was supposed to get, every Cherokee was supposed to get a 640-acre allotment. But they made sure that only 38 of them got allotments. The rest, too bad. Move away. Go to Arkansas somehow. Sequoyah, the great linguist who developed the Cherokee language, he was stuck down in Creek Path Town, way down with Chief Path Killer. This is the Telephone Blockhouse along the Little Tennessee where they did the Treaty of 1805, the one I showed you. Okay. That background was. Okay. But let's see. I'm gonna skip that. Here's an interesting one right here. These the treaties. I'll just show you something here. If I can get that link. We'll go here. And we get this. Okay, these are Andrew Jackson's. These are the Andrew Jackson papers. So it's just more proof that he knew who the chiefs were. At the time of the first removal, these are his records and his writing from his office. Path Killer and Touchelay were jointly the heads of the Cherokee Nation, then Glass and then Dick Justice. Touchelay, Glass, and Dick Justice came to Arkansas with these others, some of the others. Now, some of them stayed because they created a adversarial condition against moving to Arkansas, which played in the government's favor at that time. They said they wanted them to go, but they really didn't want them all to go because then they couldn't facilitate the next plan. They had to have some of them here. The ones that stayed behind were ousted by the 1827 unauthorized constitutional convention and election by Ross, the one that's famous, but no one authorized it. They did it on their own. And of course, Andrew Jackson knew all about it.
So you're saying this list is in Jackson's hand?
These are his records. Right from, so General Jackson has his intelligence, just like Agent Meeks, President Monroe, all of them knew who the chiefs were. More importantly, he knew who the chiefs were not. These are the famous Trail leaders they call chiefs, who he knew were not chiefs. And then he did the famous thing where he said, Cherokee Nation versus Georgia, World Georgia. The Supreme Court, Judge Charles Marshall said, and the others said that Cherokee Nation was a nation, but he said that, let's see, falls through on it, and he went through with the removal. But they were friends for years, That's all. To me, it's all scripted. That's all part of the plan. Because he knew too long, and in the history books they don't discuss none of that stuff. Okay. So this is Toy and Brenda. I just met these over the last year. They didn't know hardly anything about their Cherokee heritage. Like I was saying, it's the byproduct of being surrounded and everybody quiet. And it's silence, all the way going back to the people in that picture, my great-great-grandparents, that happened to their parents. And they just barely passed down their Cherokee. I've interviewed family members who are long gone now of the Vickers, and they just, that's all they knew was that they had the Cherokee. That's it. Nothing else. And for the look, Oklahoma's got 400,000 members, but 250,000 of them are less than 1/16. You would know they're Cherokee from Adam, you know, because even at half Cherokee, half the time you can't tell at half Cherokee. So it's, but you know they know now they got the Cherokee heritage, and that's great.
Well, we'd always been told we had to
Yeah.
be, but we didn't know
The story,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, and the culture, you know, about the language and stuff, and but you know we didn't leave. This is Frankie Allen. He just found out this year. So, you know, we've been here all along, and
We see Franklin.
I got into this from that one picture. If I never had that one picture that was given to me on the day my grandpa died at his funeral, none of this would ever take place. Okay. We'll go to segment 2. There's the Chiefs again. This is the colonial times. They went to England. And if you're reading this, you can read through that if you go to my webpage, my Facebook page. It says here, they were there, they were well-mannered, you know, and they had a good time. They talked about trade, because the trade, there's the head chief again. This is a 1761 treaty. They went to war with South Carolina against Archibald Montgomery. They actually defeated them the first fight, but then they were out of ammunition. They couldn't continue on. Yeah.
During the American Revolution, did the Cherokee Nation side with England or with the colony?
No. Well, they were in for years, and the only problem they had with the rebels is they were squatting, entering their lands up at north, at the northern part. I'll get to that. This is a letter in 1769 before the Revolution, and they're having problems with the settlers coming down from Virginia. You know, and this is in South Carolina. They're having a meeting with the South Carolina leaders, and they're just saying they're surrounding us. They're coming down on our lands, and this is with Ketaguska, Conestoga, all the guys in that. It's all these guys are meeting. And they're meeting with, these are heads of state. You know, it's not like a bunch of wild guys running around, shooting arrows, hiding behind bushes, shooting arrows at, you know, they're way more sophisticated than that. And there's their agent, John Stewart, before the Revolution. He was stationed at Mobile, Pensacola, at the start of the Revolution. Some more records. I don't want to get into that.
Question,
Yeah.
if you think that you have an ancestor, which I do, that married a Cherokee princess whose name was changed to E-D-I-E Nations, and from Tennessee, the Nations, how do you go about verifying that lineage, knowing the parents' names also?
Well, I don't know what to tell you.
Ancestry will tell you some things.
See, what we did was got photographs and sworn affidavits, because they were supposed to do the census, they never did it. They did a partial census, to make it seem like they're gonna follow through. And I've got info on that. But I don't know why this is stopping here. Let's see.
So could you recommend a resource?
No, there's really none that would cover it. We got pictures.
What about DNA testing?
No, that right there is not trustworthy at all. If they did testing, if they went to the Cherokee Nation in the Eastern Band and went to full bloods and got samples, that would be something. But there's no single DNA profile that would match every Cherokee or any Indian. They haven't done it. They haven't done enough. It's not big enough to find something to trace to, especially if they went to the Cherokee, like I said, if they went to them and they got samples, that would be something to go by. But they don't have that. And I'm not getting out of this. for some
What
reason.
Mike told me was different areas where, you know, like the southern region of the United States now, where they was at is Alabama, Tennessee, down in there.
What year were they supposed to do the census?
1818,
1818?
yeah.
That
Never
would have
did.
been off year, they do it even years, it'd be 1820 then, right?
Right after
It
the
wouldn't be a
treaty.
US federal census. That would be a special census.
Oh, it was a special census.
A census of the.
I think we're froze up there,
Cherokee.
David.
Cherokee, and they just.
Has anyone ever tried to get the Department of the Interior to recognize an Arkansas tribe?
Yeah, I've contacted the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs. I've contacted them. See, something came up a while back, and it was about the arts and crafts. The Cherokee Nation went public saying that they wanted another amendment that precluded non-federal Indians making art and considering it Native American made. They wanted that amendment. So they went to the Senate, where it was an open discussion, and they tried to have that entered into it. And so I started writing them in. I got several emails to them. They read them all, they acknowledged they read them. And I made sure to tell them that the Cherokee tier were the Cherokee Nation, the principal chiefs, and that they got out of that census. I let them know everything. And they still haven't gotten back with me. No. His name is Jason Schatz. Or Brian Schatz, Senator, and Lisa McConnell. You remember her? Them two are the two heads, and there's like 6 other senators. These are all senators. And my research, I mean, the lady I talked to said, yeah, it's really good stuff. It's a matter of record. But are they going to do anything for us? They haven't said anything, which means probably no. Which I strongly disagree.
I would imagine the Cherokee Nation in Oklahoma opposes those efforts.
Right. They don't want anybody else, right? They are vehemently against anybody outside of them being Cherokee. Even though I showed it my family and us and everybody else, they just won't have it. And so that's where we're at, and I don't know what to do next, you know, it's, what do you do?
I know our library here has a huge offering of Native American census from all over. Have you checked in our library to see, you know, what you might find? It's in the
Well,
genealogy room.
there's no, I've been through all of it, I've been doing this so long that there's just nothing there to cover us. There's nothing that will ever cover us. It's like, I might have wits end that myself, but I was thinking that the population of Arkansas could support us somehow. We do need your support because we'll never do it alone. And we can work together, and I'll try to talk to the state and the federal government, but see you later. But I don't know if they're gonna go for it, so. But we could work together. It would take people coming together and developing our safety program for, because it's really something to worry about. The illegals coming here, they can spread everywhere. and I come from an area, I was friends with a lot of them, but I would never recommend living in that situation. I moved out of it. And these are a whole new breed coming here. They're like totally different than them. They're not Americanized at all. So that's a real problem. We don't know what we're getting. And you don't want to have the same thing happen with the Indians happening to us. Indians and American citizens. And that could happen. This doesn't stop. You see, they landed in 1607, say, they didn't reach the church for 100 years. You know, and it's just the influx of hordes of people wanting to live here. And that's what happened. The Cherokees and all the other Indian nations came out and got the short end of the straw, that was big time. And history could repeat itself, who knows? And so, if you got any ideas, you can go to my Facebook page and leave a comment to get back. But, you know, I've talked to the federal government, and they're not gonna do, I doubt if they'll do anything. That's really disappointing. Yeah.
I'm not understanding the issue there between the Indian and the Cherokee specifically, and are you talking about illegal immigrants? Immigration?
Well, nowadays, back then, the treaties that took place were done because the colonists were coming into Indian lands. See, right? But that is like us today with the southern border. To the Cherokees and the Indian Nations back then, that was their problem, and they're almost alike. So you can learn by history. No one knows this because we don't look at it this way. No one wants to look at what happened to the original people here because it's, you know, it's not flattering and it's kind of negative. But if we do look at that, people will understand that that's, you know, I know it's more of a danger because I know this history. And that stuff that's happening there, in another 100 years, God knows what can happen. And we're going by that Constitution. But the Indian laws can be different where we could set laws to, we're supposed to be protected by the United States from that. And they never did it. But they could do it now and protect all of us. That way kind of get around the Constitution that allows it. Because we don't need that anymore. It's gonna hurt us. Okay.
Summarize.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks a lot for showing up anyways today. Really appreciate you. Hope you enjoyed it. And,
Are you gonna come back again?
yeah.